Very good. We will kick off the December meeting of the Public Works Infrastructure Special Committee. Like to start with some quick introductions. My name is Neil Dobler. I represent District 7. Councilman Padilla, you are muted.
Thank you, Neil. Yes, Mike Padilla, representing District 5.
And Councilman Lesser.
Mike Lesser, District 9.
Great, thank you. City Manager Trout, would you like to introduce the staff that's going to be making presentations this afternoon?
Yes, Braxton Copley and Bob Sample are over at Utilities. And then also we have Hannah Ulrich, who is, I believe, in our office over at Holiday. And let's see. And then I think, if needed, I think, was it Mary that? Yeah, Mary's online here when we get to that stage of the, regarding the changing of the governing body rules. So I think that's it specifically, unless, let's see, Brian, were you going to cover, or is it Robert that's going to cover the sidewalk?
Yeah, I'm covering for Brian today.
Okay, so Robert will handle the sidewalk. So first up would be utilities.
Okay, we're going to take care of a little housekeeping here. We did not approve the minutes from the October meeting last month, so we are going to approve both the October and November minutes. I would look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. All right, back to you, City Manager.
Thank you. Sorry to jump ahead there.
It's all right.
Yes, one of the things that we talked about, even though it was not in the initial charge with the decision to form this committee to approve various items, thought it was good that we have a discussion regarding the infrastructure work that's being done in the area of utilities. And so it really isn't something that the committee was charged with approving, but we felt that it was very pertinent with all of the discussions we've been having regarding regarding capital improvement, that we have a discussion about the utility capital improvement. So asked Braxton to pull together a presentation. And so I'll turn it over to Braxton, and I see Bob is there as well to talk about our utilities.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the utilities. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay, so hopefully all of you can now see the 3 million gallon water tower that we have.
Yep.
All right. So as the committee had requested at the November meeting, I'm going to briefly talk about our water line replacement program, and then I'm also going to do a quick overview of the major projects that we have in construction, design, or have recently finished at our water and wastewater treatment plants. So as you're aware, we have 890 miles of water main throughout the city of Topeka. Our target replacement cycle would be at 100 years, given the fact that the useful life of water main is typically rated right at 100 years. Prior to the last rate increase, we had $4 million per year for water line replacement, which basically equates to about 4 miles a year. The governing body did respond to our request to increase our overall CIP, and particularly our water line program, to 6.5 million per year, which gets us up to about 150-year replacement cycle. This is the FRACTA tool that we use to help us with our water main selection. And I just want to point out a couple of, whoops, how do I go back? There we go. I was trying to minimize the slides since I can't see everything. There we go. So our FRACTA tool actually has a couple of great side benefits to it. One is that we have now ascribed a installation date to all of the water lines in our system. So if you look at the left-hand side, this is what was constructed in the city of Topeka prior to 1920. So all of this line, about 57 miles of it, is over 100 years old. And then you can see as the city developed, and this would be a snapshot of the 60s and 70s, you can see how the city was continuing to grow. You see the old part, central part of the city, and then you see we started to grow out in the classic donut fashion. And then as of 2020, you can see where we have the rest of the city. And these are all color-coded in terms of the decades of installation. One thing that I want to point out, which is a significant issue for us, is that during the 80s, we made the switch over from cast iron pipe to ductile iron pipe. And we have approximately 200 miles of ductile iron pipe that is all in the 30 to 40 year age range that we are plagued. We have incredibly high break history on that DIP because unfortunately at the time, we didn't have a good specification for installation standards, and it was just directly buried in our soil, and we have a lot of very heavy corrosive soil. This is our break history in a graphic or visual format. There are 6,000 red dots on this map, and those are just the breaks that we've had over the last 10 years. The nationwide average for breaks per 100 miles, which is the metric that we use in the utilities for our break rate, is 14 breaks per 100 miles. Our break rate over the last 10 years is 66 breaks per 100 miles. Break rate is one indicator of the condition of your distribution system. As I alluded to earlier, to assist us in our water line selection, when you have effectively, I can do 6.5 million, which equates to about 6.5 miles of water line. How do I make good data-driven decisions in terms of which lines do I replace, given the fact that I've got 60 miles of line that are past its useful life, and then I've got another 200 miles of ductile iron pipe that has high break history on it. The tool that we use is FRACTA, and you can see that by the color coding here, blue is good, red is bad. And what you're seeing is a composite map, and this is a function of both consequence of failure and likelihood of failure. And it's important that you take both of these into consideration. You can have a line that has a low consequence of failure. For example, if I have a single line that's feeding a residential neighborhood, that, you know, if I have a break on that line, yes, I'm going to inconvenience some property owners, but my consequence of failure is not that high. Versus if I have a break on the line that's feeding hills or feeding resource, and I put them out of business, out of production, or I have a break on a line feeding a hospital, my consequence of failure is significant. And so when I'm making decisions, I need to take into consideration both my consequence of failure and the likelihood of failure, and that composite score is a business risk exposure. And with that, I will pause momentarily to see if you have any questions about our water main replacement program. Seeing none, I'm going to move over and do a review of what we have in at our water and wastewater treatment plants. did a really good job of talking about water lines when we were going in front of the governing body on rate increases, but I didn't do a very good job of explaining the millions of dollars of necessary improvements that we have at the water and wastewater treatment plants. I mean, I can have the best distribution system in the world, but if I can't treat water and meet all of the requirements the EPA has mandated in terms of the 100 different contaminants that they have established maximum contaminant levels for, or to be able to comply with the long-term surface treatment rules, then I have completely missed the boat, because my treatment plants, both on the water and wastewater side, are what are ensuring that I maintain regulatory compliance and keep everyone healthy and safe. On the wastewater side, currently either just recently completed, in construction, or in design, I have $55 million worth of projects. And the project that I have right here is the centrifuge project. So this was part of the combination biogas and solids handling. So the centrifuges are used to basically remove the excess liquid from our waste product, our biosolids. And our old belt filter presses could only have about a 12% solids. These new centrifuges can maintain 18% solids, which means that's a 30% reduction in terms of just the volume of biosolids that I'm generating, which means that I'm paying less tipping fees at the dump, or if I'm going to be land applying it, it greatly reduces the biomass load that I have. And so the other part of this biogas and solids handling is the actual biogas part. So we generate methane, and that is a byproduct of our digesters. And currently that methane is being flared off. So we basically, we burn it. We have planned, and what you can see outlined here is the 2-mile gas pipeline that we're in the process of constructing right now. So it goes under Soldier Creek, goes under Highway 24, and under the Kansas River. So this in and of itself is a little engineering feat to be able to get this. And the purpose of this line is to dump it at the Southern Star offtake facility that we're going to be constructing. And it starts from the Oakland Wastewater Treatment Plant. So after we capture the gas, scrub it and compress it, then we will be sending it along the pipeline. We currently are estimating approximately $1.7 million annual of revenue from both the sale of gas and the sale of the tax credits. And we have negotiated our offtake agreement with Southern Star. We've also, and we're in the process of getting that executed, and we have negotiated our offtake services agreement with Blue Source, who's going to be marketing the tax credits for us. So in design, we have the sludge thickening. And so the sludge is basically in the bottom of our clarifiers and coming off of our oxidation ditch. You basically have the solids that are part of the waste stream. So the sludge is the sort of the watery in-between stage before we get to the biosolids. And this is a critical component. Currently, we use dissolved air flotation. It's at the end of its useful life. We're looking at different technologies to be able to have the same sort of efficiencies with our sludge thickening that we currently have now with our centrifuges in our biosolids program. We just recently completed the mixer replacement at our oxidation ditch. So you can see the oxidation ditch, which is these 3 huge, massive basins. And what these mixers do is they entrain oxygen to help promote the breakdown of the organic matter in the waste stream. The old The old ones were absolutely at the end of their useful life. In fact, they had the nasty habit of snapping off of the shaft and dropping the impeller down to the bottom. And then also we went with variable frequency drives on all 15 of them. Before, only 2 per basin were VFDs, and then the other 3 were just fixed. And so we're actually seeing these are more energy efficient, our new mixers, than the old ones were. UV expansion, this was a huge project. So ultraviolet light is used to inactivate the viruses and bacteria in the waste stream. This is the last step prior to discharging from the plant into the Kansas River. So the significant issue here was our rated capacity is 32 MGD. So we were able to treat our waste stream, but our wet weather flow, we actually have a rated capacity of up to 100 MGD. And so with the new system, we can now actually treat 75 MGD. And either of our UV basins would be able to handle the entire flow from the plant, so that if we had one of them down, we're replacing bulbs, we had a breakdown, we would still be able to maintain full compliance with our UV. And then in addition, we can now treat up to 75 MGD with disinfection when we have significant wet weather events. And we are just now getting started on the nutrient removal project in terms of the design. This is mandated by the EPA. Our new National Pollution Discharge Elimination Permit requires that we achieve just a very strict level of total phosphorus. To give you an idea, the new permit limits our phosphorus discharge to 100 pounds per day on an annual average. For the last 4 years of data that I've seen, we were at approximately 450 to 500 pounds per day. So we have our work cut out for us in terms of the reduction. The permit also states that the goal is 1 milligram per liter. Again, the data over the last 4 years is showing that our current discharge rate is 7 milligrams per liter. By the end of January, the KDHE and EPA are requiring that we have put in front of them a plan. And then by December 31st of 2023, we need to have construction complete. And then in December 31st of 2024, we have to be in full compliance under our new permit. So it is a very, very tight timeline that we are working on to be able to comply. While the nitrogen removal is not part of our current NPDES permit, as part of our project and our challenge to our consultant who's doing the design, we've asked them to come up with nitrogen removal, because we know that in our next permit, in all likelihood, that will be moved from a goal to a hard requirement. So with one other project on the wastewater side, and that's really not at the plant so much as it's really more impactful at our pump stations. We had initially just come up with this relatively small project budget to look at our 4 largest pump stations in terms of what technologies were out there. We're looking at various technologies, including carbon absorption, biological filters, chemical scrubbers, as well as some newer liquid technologies, which basically all have pretty much the same chemistry. The idea is that you dissolve oxygen into that waste stream so that you keep it aerobic and you prevent the formation of hydrogen sulfides. So we've had a number of complaints with the drought that we've experienced over the last 4 to 5 months. And so we have now expanded this odor control project to cover all of our wastewater pump stations as opposed to just the 4 main ones. And with that, I will just briefly pause to see if anyone has any questions about our wastewater plant or pump station projects. Moving to the water treatment plant, we are currently just coming into the final stages of the complete rehabilitation of the east filter. So you can see the troughs where the water comes in, then spills over. You see the under drains down here. The drains would then be covered by a minimum of 30 inches of media that the water would filter through. This is absolutely a regulatory driven project. A couple of years ago, KDHE basically has increased our requirement for the treatment or removal of cryptosporidium because of the high levels of crypto in the Kansas River. And so in the water treatment world, a log is basically a factor of 10. So a 2 log removal would mean a 99% removal, and a 3 log removal would be a 99.9% removal. Well, KDHE and EPA have basically told us that when it comes to cryptosporidium, we used to be in the 99% removal, but now we are in the 99.9%. So the significant updates that we made to East Filter would allow for us to meet their requirements on either an individual filter or combined filter basis to achieve that 99.9% removal that they're now requiring of us. So the West Basin rehab, we are in preliminary design. I've just gotten just approved the final changes to the tech memo. You can see that this is a 60-plus-year-old plant. I'm just focusing a couple of items on here where you see just advanced levels of corrosion on the parts. You've got separation on the basin. You have infiltration down into the tunnel. So we are just getting started on moving forward on the design for major rehabilitation on the West Plant Basin. And then the last item that I'm just going to touch upon briefly is modifications to the wastewater treatment plant to basically help us with a number of things. One is to reduce HAAs. You'll remember back in 2018, we were out of compliance on our haloacidic acids, which are a byproduct of chlorine disinfection. We have not had the ability in the last 30 years to treat for taste and odor complaints. We used to have a powdered activated carbon system. We were at one point planning on going back to a PAC system, but KDHE will not allow us to discharge the PAC into the river. And so it's going to be cost prohibitive to basically do a sewer connection to be able to take our waste stream into the Oakland wastewater treatment plant. And then as many of you are aware, because of the algal blooms that happen at a very regular basis up in the Milford Basin, including a number of times this last year that actually had cyanotoxin releases being transported down the Kansas River. We're looking for a disinfection treatment method that will give us the ability to effectively neutralize cyanotoxins. So we'll be talking more about this as we present the CIP to you, but basically the idea is to add ozone as a pre-treatment on our raw water to help us with cyanotoxins, taste and odor, and of course, maintain regulatory compliance for haloacidic acids. And so with that, I will gladly stand for any questions related to the utilities.
Thanks, Braxton. Great presentation. Any questions from the committee?
Yeah, Chair, I have a couple.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you. Braxton, I fear I already know the answer to this, but How many of these projects you're undertaking are for our benefit, and how many are just because we have to for regulatory reasons?
The absolute vast majority are for regulatory reasons. I mean, for us to be able to meet all of the requirements related to both our wastewater treatment permit as well as our water treatment permit, all of the projects at the plants are regulatory driven.
Okay, thank you for that. Because we're forced to do these by regulatory, are there any grants or any help they will give us or can give us financially or otherwise?
The general rule to that is no, there are unfortunately unfunded mandates. The one potential funding source that's out there are the state revolving loan funds. But those are not, it's not a grant. And unfortunately, when you look at our debt service model, because the city of Topeka has a very good bond rating. And so we're able to achieve very close to what the state can offer in terms of the low interest on the SRF loans. But the real kicker is we have to either have the full faith and credit guarantee of the governing body, which basically would put those loans at the same level and would actually cut into your ability to bond just your regular bonds, or we'd have to go out and pay a premium for insurance. And then the other significant issue is when we revenue bond, our amortization is 30 years. The state revolving loan funds are only 20 years, so it has a significantly higher debt service impact. In fact, on the wastewater side, over the course of the next 4 to 5 years, we're going to be retiring a number of those 20-year-old SRF loans, which was a big reason why we only had to ask for a 1% increase on the wastewater side, because we're going to have more funding available when those SRF loans are taken out to be able to help us maintain the level of funding that we need to replace aging infrastructure and to keep up with our regulatory requirements.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it's just, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's just so frustrating that with the amount of money we're having to spend just to meet regulatory demands, we can almost fix every water main in Topeka over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Braxton, we do have one project that has the potential to produce revenue, and that's the biogas project, correct?
Yes, correct. And our current estimate is just right at 1.7 million annually in terms of the sale of the gas and tax credits, with the majority of that being from the sale of the tax credits.
Thank you. Not too many projects that the city does anywhere that has the potential to produce fairly significant revenue. So it's kind of cool. Councilman Padilla, any questions? Councilman Lesser, any questions for Braxton?
No questions.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. Looks like our next item is an update on the fleet replacement program. We did have a fairly robust discussion last month on fleet replacement and the potential of a lease program. So I will turn it over to, I guess, the city manager to start with.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, it was a very good discussion last time, and I think that I'm talking to Hannah, there's been some work that has already been done on that, and so I'll just let her go through it. Hannah?
Okay, let me share my screen and we'll walk through the update memo that I had sent earlier today. So overview and summary, the staff has started to take actions and understanding a little bit more robustly about what some of the implications are of a lease program, and also understanding where it might fit into our city fleet. So before we get started into some of the conversations based on lease program, Councilman Dobler, last month you had requested to see essentially some examples of what our fleet looks like in comparison to the model that we discussed that was referenced in the Mercury report. So based on our reporting, I selected two random samplings. One ended up being a police SUV, and the other one's a truck out of street. So walking through the memo I sent, the first one is a 2013 Ford Explorer with the police department. We discussed last month that we are going to explore the PD component of a lease program, but definitely want to understand more of the information and some of the details around how that's handled, knowing our PD fleet is run very hard, especially our field ops. So in summary, that vehicle was purchased for just over $26,000. Since 2013, we have spent just under $12,000 in repair and maintenance on this vehicle, and we're currently sitting at 87,000 miles. So looking at this first chart, there's lots of different lines, but the gray, orange, and blue are one for what was shown from the Mercury report last.
Is that just me, or did we?
Let me know when I'm back.
Oh, it's either that or she's holding really still.
You are. I think we lost you at the gray, orange, and blue line. So
I apologize.
Good.
Yes, I am plugged into our city network, so I'm sorry. So the gray is essentially the sum of what our depreciated capital investment in that vehicle is, plus our repairs and maintenance. I also added a couple other lines just to kind of help guide the conversation with where we've been talking about. The dashed green line is the mileage. So when we talked last month about how our PD cruisers are used very hard, you can see that in year 1 and year 2, we put an exponential amount of miles on these vehicles. Per the practice with our police department today, they rotate out vehicles out of operation into other departments. So you can see the mileage start to flatten off. The Mercury summary recommended replacement cycle that we reviewed last month is this line in red. So it shows the 48,000 mile, or sorry, the 48 month marker for a PD vehicle. And this orange bar is the lowest annual cost, meaning that's based on this individual vehicle's actualized maintenance and repairs and depreciation. That would be the optimal time to replace that vehicle. So there is definitely a gap between what Mercury had recommended versus our real data that shows a slight gap. A lot of that is driven off the fact that PD practices rotation of vehicles out of field ops, which is dramatically lowering the mileage that was anticipated out of a patrol SUV. Does that make sense? I know I just threw a lot of numbers and lines out there. So I'll pause for questions.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else on the committee?
Yeah, I guess, Hannah, I understand how a few units they could do that, but aren't the vast majority of our units patrol units? So you wouldn't see this type of thing, would you?
I wouldn't say the vast majority. There are quite a few and a large percentage that are patrol. This happened to be one of the random sampling ones that come in. And so they do try to do this as much as they can. Oftentimes it's closer to that 3-year mark that they're able to truly switch them out or rotate them through with a newer model. But it's it's something they do try, knowing that it can potentially extend out the life of the vehicle.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Neil.
Go ahead, Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, the only thing, that I'll say, honestly, and I brought this up not just here, but at other times, and I'm trying to be nice and diplomatic here, but I can't get a report at 1:28 for a 2:00 meeting and have the time to really review it. You know what I mean? I'm just being honest. I'm not that smart. I mean, to ask the questions and educate myself on this. And it's not this just as a continual problem. I mean, Tony and Neil and I and Mike have talked about this, but in the future, I really need to have this so I have some time to look at this and then ask educated questions, because I can't have 30 minutes to do it and then educate myself to ask the questions I want to. And I'm just shooting you straight, honest. You know what I mean?
I totally understand, and I do apologize for getting this out so late. Was definitely not my intention, and I'll work to make sure I can get out more in advance in the future. If you do have
No, honestly, this is not your issue on that. Honestly, Brent, I brought this to your attention numerous times, and I think it needs to be made clear to staff that we need information much sooner than 30 minutes before a frickin' meeting, okay?
Understood.
And if you have any follow-up questions post this meeting, once you've had a chance to digest, please reach out. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and we can readdress it next month as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good suggestion. We'll, if you can walk us through it at a fairly high level today, and then we'll have a chance to review, and we'll go ahead and put this on. And I think we talked last month about this being a fairly permanent agenda item for a while until we understand what the leasing options look like and what some of the final decisions are. So
that is no problem.
All right, thank you.
So high level going through, this was one of the two examples provided in this document. The second one was a 2007 Ford F-150 that's currently with the street department. You can see it does have various different items that were in there. So when purchased, it was purchased for $15,000. To date, we have spent $17,000 on repairs and maintenance, and it's currently sitting at 93,000 miles. So the graph below is the same type of graph that we just walked through with the same colors and lines. So you can see the mileage going up and at what point the optimal time is based on its specific data to repair or to replace, which would be in year 8, as well as what the Mercury generic recommendation would have been, which is at the end of year 10. So a slight gap there, but you can see how it had a couple larger repair items that have hit over the last couple years, or last several years, items such as an air conditioner that went out, some brake issues, some steering concerns, and an oil pump. So as it's aged, it's definitely had some additional maintenance requirements. So this is very high level on where we're currently at in exploring the lease option. So our teams are working with a few different elements. One is the financial analysis. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we do have our staff working to compile a list of what is a good option for a lease program. This is a very in-depth analysis going through all the assets that we have, how we utilize them today, what their future use is, and if they would be a good candidate for this kind of an endeavor. We are also reviewing 2 of the leasing cost worksheets that I'll touch on here in a few that we've received from Enterprise, which is for a Chevy Malibu and a GMC Sierra. We are awaiting the pricing sheets for an F-150 to compare with our current fleet, as that's the primary asset that we buy today. We're also working to develop a model that would compare costs across our leasing, bonding, and CAS funding options, which will be inclusive of a cost exit analysis. So we are partnering internally across divisions as well as with our financial advisor to ensure that we're able to give a comprehensive view of what this looks like. The other component on this is the contract analysis. So as you can imagine with the lease program, there are many different contractual concerns that municipalities have to be aware of and make sure that we're vetting. So currently our team is reviewing the Sourcewell purchasing agreement to make sure that it aligns with our procurement policies. We're also reviewing the standard contracts from Enterprise that we've sent on to legal just recently. They haven't had a chance to vet it yet, with feedback that we've received from our financial advisor as he's recently done this sort of engagement with the city of Shawnee. So the two pieces below that I want to start touching on are the two cost examples. Before we get into the specific examples, I want to kind of lay out a few of the things that we need to make sure that we're aware of that's built into the models. So one of them that we don't yet have a strong comparison for, like I said, we're waiting for the F-150 to understand what costing that looks like from Enterprise. But to give a baseline, right now off of the state contract, we can buy a F-150 for $21,000 against a MSRP of just under 29, so at a 27% discount. This is what makes trucks a very desirable purchase for lease programs because we can buy them at such a discount and they maintain their resale value. So looking at enterprise model, it's really big on optimizing the resale. And that's the basis, is that when can they sell it and get the most out of it to give the return back to the city. So in looking at that, there's a few key terminology I want to explain and make sure we're understanding. One is the purchase cost. So it's the capitalized cost after all rebates, incentives, discounts, plus a $200 delivery fee. Our MSRP, as most of us would know, is the suggested retail price plus a destination fee since they order directly from the manufacturer. The management fee is 0.10% of the invoice price before rebates. The interest is a 3-year treasury note plus 350 basis points, or about 3.5%. The estimated resale value is based on Enterprise's projection of the current used car market. So as we know, that can fluctuate. Right now, we're in a very heightened state for the used cars, but that is part of what they can help us manage, is understand how that market shifts over time. So touching on the interest rate a little bit, because that is variable. Once we start a lease term, it is locked in for the period of that term. However, over time, as we all know, interest rates change. For a 3-year treasury note, to provide some baseline, right now we're at almost all-time lows, with the December beginning of month starting at about a 0.22 percentage point. So that's compared to last year at about 1.63%. For a frame of reference, I've included a high-level chart that just shows December BOM year over year, as well as a graph to kind of show the variation that it has over time. With the enterprise agreement, you do lock in a rate for the set term. So for example, if we lock in a rate for a 12-month term, at the end of the 12th month, we'll have the option to buy, or we could extend out the lease, at which time the interest rate will be reevaluated based on current market trends. So going on, before I go on to the specific examples, are there any additional questions? Okay. So going down to the Malibu, over the next 5-year term, there would be a cost of about $9,500. The breakout is below. So the purchase price of $18,900 on a 60-month term, broken down the monthly, annual, and term totals for each of the principal amount that we're paying, our management fee and our interest. So we're looking at, for a Malibu, a $300 a month payment, essentially. At the end of 60 months, it's projected to have a balance of $4,700 and a termination fee of $395. Again, based on Enterprise's market study on what they could get for resale, selling within their markets. It is estimated that we would get a $13,000 return on it, leaving us a net $8,300 at the end. So over the course of the term, we've essentially paid out in cash $18,000, giving us essentially a 50% cost over 5 years that we'll be paying out in fees. Enterprise was very straightforward up front, saying that sedans are not a very lucrative component of their fleet model, but it is something that is a necessity for some of our assets. The other one that they gave us an example on was the GMC Sierra. This would show a net gain of $1,700 over the course of the 1-year term. And this is attributed to the high resale value that trucks currently have. So on here, we have the purchase cost again, our lease term of 12 months, and then monthly breakout of our $446 payment by principal, management, and interest, which shows the balance at the term, our estimated resale value of $28,500 to give us $7,000 cash at the end, which based on the cost that we had incurred up to that point will net us out positive $1,700. This is something that making money on a lease program seems odd, and definitely had us look a couple times. This is something that the Shawnee County Parks and Rec Department has been able to realize, not in a large way as they started very small, but it is something that they did speak to as a positive note for what the enterprise lease program could bring. And that is high level summary. I'll take any questions and we'll bring this back for further conversation next month.
All right, just so I make sure I'm understanding, basically saying we may be better off to continue to purchase sedans, but look at leasing pickup trucks. Is that correct?
That is what it's saying initially, yes, is that the cost is going to be much higher with our sedans, and it could be very cost advantageous with trucks, assuming the market holds relatively consistent.
And both of those would, the purchase would utilize the state of Kansas contract for the sedan as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, any questions, Councilman Padilla?
Just a quick one. Hannah, do you know the inventory of TPD? Are the SUVs classified as trucks or if they're separate? And then how many sedans we have that we use? Do you know what that inventory is?
I can get you the inventory. Most of the PD inventory at this point are SUVs, which fall closer to the resale value of kind of the truck on holding their value right now. However, they do wear down, so it doesn't have quite the same resale. I can get you the number of sedans that are in our current fleet, but that is one of the pieces that we are currently exploring is we need the type of vehicle that we currently have, or is it just because sedans are typically cheaper to purchase up front, so we haven't explored the option of an SUV or a truck.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilman Emerson.
I guess my question was kind of around along the same lines as Mr. Padilla. I guess I was wondering, Hannah, you'd kind of mentioned that we need sedans, and I guess I can see them in police. Are there other departments that need sedans or that couldn't use pickups?
It would depend on what kind of miles they're putting on the vehicle. So the conversation is going to be that balance between the cost of gas versus the cost of the vehicle. So if they're putting a lot of miles on the vehicle every year, it may be more cost advantageous to go with a sedan because of that gap. But from a terms of use, there's probably not many that would require that. It's just more how many miles are they going to put on it.
Okay, I guess then we also have the issue, you can't do this with any department really that needs to really heavily modify them, right? Like the water, seems like they put on the strobe lights and all those things and special flashers and stuff. So obviously police, the same thing, you start punching holes and stuff and it wouldn't work, is that right?
Yes, there would be definitely a trade-off in terms of what we could get at the end. For PD and for some of those specialty ones, we are exploring, are there less invasive ways to get us modified light bars or some of the mounts that we may have on the inside of a vehicle. So for our true field ops, there's no way of getting around it. But for some of our more hybrid vehicles, we are seeing if there are other options. But that is going to be when we start to classify out. It may be a truck on paper, but based on all of the additional lifts and or equipment that we have to add, it's not cost advantageous to lease.
I really appreciate you looking into all this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, Councilman Lesser, any questions?
No, I don't have any right now.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. We move on to item 5, excuse me, which is determining whether we want to make a recommendation to the governing body to change the rules. The attachment in the packet for this meeting indicates that we would make this a permanent committee, the infrastructure committee. I guess I'd like to maybe start this discussion with just going around the members of the committee, get your input on how you feel we've done over the last, I guess, 6 months since this committee was formed, whether you think there's value in what we're doing, and whether you think we ought to extend this or make this a permanent committee. So I'm just going to kind of go as I see you on the screen. I'll start with Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Chair. I definitely think there's value in making this a permanent committee. I think out of all the committees, of the current standing committees, I think this one touches our citizens more than probably any other committee. You know, this is talking about the streets that people drive on, the sidewalks they walk on, or maybe vice versa, and as well as utilities. I mean, this is really, this is really the things that impact people and touch everybody in our city every day. So I think it's as important, if not more important, than the other things we talk about.
Thank you. Councilman Padilla.
I would echo Councilman Emerson's comments, because I do think that these are areas that we get a lot of concern from our citizens, and this gives us some, I think, solid information to base our answers on when we respond to them. And I think that it helps me feel better about what's going on and how we're approaching all of this basic needs. So I do think that it should be a standing committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lesser.
I don't have anything additional. I would concur with my colleagues.
Thank you. I would as well. I think there's value in being able to discuss some of these issues. I know we talked during the CIP sessions last year about leasing, for instance. Becomes kind of difficult sometimes to flesh out a lot of those issues when we've got, every CIP project to talk about. So I think it really helps to be able to spread those things out. I also think we could probably do some presentations, perhaps like the quarterly public works update or utility update in these committee meetings, as opposed to the start of a council meeting where it often seems like we have a packed agenda anyways. And give us, in the committee setting, we have, seems like a little bit more flexibility to ask questions. So I guess I would ask the city manager just for his thoughts and perhaps what he's heard from the staff as far as the value of this committee.
Sure, I'm happy to. We have seen the opportunity to really understand what the governing body is looking for, format, et cetera, regarding our infrastructure projects and how we go about them. I think this has been extremely beneficial for us to be able to understand what your needs are in order to be able to better characterize the projects that we're doing, explain the processes that we're following in order to be able to come up with the list that instead of just seeing the list, you're understanding better our process. And then there have been a number of items that we've been seeking input on from you regarding what is the priority, looking at our sidewalk programs, our alley programs, medians, trying to understand what is the priority you have and you hear about, so that that gives us guidance when we're making decisions on which project to recommend to move forward. So it's been extremely valuable for us, helps us to have some better guidance when we're making decisions and recommendations for the CIP. So I think that when we're making and bringing forward those projects, we're hopefully going to hit the mark better on the things that, besides the ones that we've identified, utilizing the criteria you've given to help us make better recommendations.
Very good. Thank you. I guess at this point, I just ask Mary Feeney, the item that's in front of us is really just a rule change, a council rule change to add the Public Infrastructure Committee as a standing committee. Is that correct?
Yes, it would just be a motion to approve the amendment to the governing body rules, adding this committee as a permanent standing committee.
Very good. So I guess I'd entertain a motion at this point to direct this on to the governing body for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. So this, City Manager, this will be on the agenda sometime in January. Is that correct? The council agenda?
Yes, it'll be on in January. I think it's going to be like the second meeting of January.
Brent, I believe we have it on for January 19th.
Okay, third. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the correction, Lisa.
Mhm.
I remember going by memory instead of having the sheet in front of me.
All right, thank you. Item number 6 is items from staff. City Manager?
Thank you, Councilman. Robert is here to talk more about the 50/50 program and where we're going with that program. So I'll let Robert cover it.
All right, thank you. I understand that, I think this topic came up at one of the earlier infrastructure meetings. Engineering and legal have been working together on the best approach to continue with the 50/50 program, trying to put more responsibility for repairing the sidewalk back on the property owner, but also trying to, control the cost of the bids by bidding out the work. The approach that we've come up with is to bid the repairs as we normally do. However, we would accept all the bids by the contractors instead of just the low bid. The documents would be clear that any of the bids can be used by the individuals. So if a resident elects to participate in the 50/50 program, we would send them the list of the contractors and the bid prices. And we would also state the amount the city would cover, which would be based on the low bid. The property owner would be able to select any of the contractors for the work. So the property owner would hire the contractor, the city would inspect the work as usual. And once the work is completed, the contractor would invoice the city for our portion, and they would have to coordinate with the property owner on their own for their portion. So the property owners wouldn't involve the city, I guess, for their portion of the payment. Are there any questions on that proposed approach?
Yeah, if I could just clarify. So originally the city bid this out every year. The city contracted the work and supervised it or whatever, and ultimately billed the homeowner half the cost. Is that correct, Robert?
I believe once enough potential homeowners had come in where a bid could be assembled, they would be, and the homeowners, I think, had to pay in beforehand.
Okay.
So we would assemble a set number of jobs into one bid, and it was bid out, the work was done. But yeah, the city would have to get the payment from the property owners.
Okay. So the real change here is the city's still bidding out, receiving bids from several contractors. It's just the homeowner takes care of the scheduling, makes sure the project gets done, and then request a refund from the city. Is that correct?
No, the contractor would, under the proposed approach, the contractor would invoice or bill the city for the city's portion, and the contractor go directly to the property owner for the remaining portion.
Okay, very good. So the homeowner is only liable for half the cost at any point in the process.
Yeah, well, the city's portion will be based on half of the cost based on the low bid. If
Right.
the property owner selects a different contractor at a higher cost, they'd be responsible for, a portion over half.
Okay. I like that approach. It seems like what we talked about at some point in the past was the homeowner might be responsible for all of it and then have to request reimbursement from the city. So this seems like unless I misunderstood it before, this seems like a good compromise. We do have Councilwoman Ortiz with us this afternoon. Did you have a question?
I do, thank you. So if we change this process, what will happen if the homeowner doesn't pay their portion to the contractor? I don't want the contractor coming back to the city saying, I still don't have my money.
I can answer that, Mr. Chair. Essentially,
Please do.
Essentially, the resident is going to be driving this whole process. The resident will contract with a contractor. We'll give them a list that they can pick from, but the resident contracts with the contractor. Contractor does the work, city inspects, but all the city is going to do is pay half of the amount. It'll be up to the contractor to collect the rest of the money from the resident. So if the resident doesn't pay the contractor goes after the resident. The city is out of it. We pay our share and we're out of it.
I appreciate that, Mary, and I just want to make sure that, because now the way that it stands is, they have to pay their half before they even get started. So I could appreciate that. I just hope that we make sure that they truly understand the process if we're going to change it.
Yeah, they will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ortiz. So Mary, what does that look like from a contracting standpoint? Is there a contract with the city and a contract with the homeowner, or just one?
Yes, the city will contract with the contractor and essentially say, it is your obligation to get your money from the resident. We will if you give us the invoice, we will reimburse you half up to a certain amount. So the city will contract with the contractor, but it will be very clear that the contractor has got to get his money from the resident.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any questions? Councilman Lesser.
How does the contract read, or how will it read in regards to guarantee, if we're screening these contractors and saying you can use these contractors off the list, are we guaranteeing their work in regards to the quality of the product?
No, we are not. We're simply telling the resident, hey, we put this out for bid. Here are 3 contractors. This is what they'll charge. Pick one. We don't care if you don't like this list. Pick somebody else. but all we're going to pay is half.
So maybe I missed something. And so all we're going to do is pay half, but if they pick somebody outside of the list that's more expensive, we're only paying half of.
We'll pay half, but not to exceed a certain amount.
How are we coming up with that amount?
We're going to put this out for bid. And so
Okay.
we'll get several bids and we will accept all of the bids. Let's say there are three contractors. And then we'll give the resident a list of these contractors. In other words, we're trying to help the resident by saying, hey, we put this out for bid. Here are the prices, pick one. So presumably they will use one of the folks on the list.
But we're only paying half of the low bid, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Are the three then that are coming out, are they all going to be the same price? Let's just say you have, Conroy, Merricrete, and Gold Star, let's just say, for instance.
Yeah.
Are they all going to be the same price?
No, they'll probably be different prices, but it'll be up to the resident to pick one. Maybe one can do the job right away, whereas if they pick the lowest bid, they'll have to wait 4 weeks. But they're going to be driving the train, the resident, not the city.
Okay.
And I think that I'll chime in here. I think that's part of the key for it is that they may have had experience working with a certain contractor and decide that I know I'll get good quality out of that contractor based on past experience. So I'm going to choose them, even though that the low bid amount may only pay 40% of that cost. It makes more sense for me to go with someone that I know rather than go, or as Mary said, having to wait. They may want to make sure they get it done in this year versus maybe being postponed to the following year. So it gives a little bit of flexibility, whereas right now it's this contractor only when we select our contractor. So that's hopefully an improvement in the process that we have for them being able to get the project and the work done.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilman Emerson or Padilla, questions?
None.
All right, thank you. When would this process start? Is this a 2021, first part of 21, these bids go out?
I believe that's what we're aiming for, yes.
Okay. So we'll have an opportunity to see how this works during the year and maybe take a look at it at the end of the year. And
Yeah.
okay, very good. All right, any other questions? I am.
Just a quick one. Sorry,
Sure.
man.
Councilman
Sorry.
Padilla?
Just a quick one. Do we have a waiting list, or there a waiting list right now of residents who are waiting for work to be done on sidewalks? And will this change affect them somehow?
I'm not sure what the current status on the program is, whether there's anyone on a waiting list or whether all the work's been done for this year. I'm not sure what the status is on that. I can look into that and find out.
We'd appreciate that. Thank you. All right, one more time. Any questions from the committee? Does not look like there is. Thank you for that update. I am going to, when we get to item 8, draft agenda, I'm going to ask that the sidewalk issue be placed on the agenda again for next month. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala had asked for an opportunity to discuss sidewalks in her district. I think she wanted to bring some photos and some other things. Wasn't able to get it put together for this month. So we will address not necessarily the 50/50 program, but just sidewalks in general, I think, on the next meeting. At this time, we are ready for item 7, which is items from the committee. I would like to, before I ask the rest of the committee, Councilwoman Ortiz asked to bring an item in front of the committee for a response from staff. So I will turn it over to Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been dealing with a couple of issues. First of all, I want to say ditto, and I think this is a great committee. I really do. And so I will support it when it comes before the council, because I think there's a lot of questions, and when we're out there in our district and we're working and questions come up, it's just really hard to get them fixed and get the understanding. So I want to thank the committee and commend the committee for bringing this forward, and I will support it 100%. I've been dealing with on 8th Street, 801 Ware. There's a church, and I sent Neil, I sent you and the committee some pictures of it. When we start digging into it, the first thing they did, it's an alley behind a church, and the big trucks are tearing it up. And I understand there's nothing we can do about it. So the first thing that staff went in and did is they fixed the alley, and they leveled it out, and they did a great job, cut down all the brush and fixed the alley. And then I went back, and if you look in the picture, there's still a huge hole in the street because we don't have curbs and we don't have anything that can really support holding the street together. So then when I was there, I took some pictures. I think I sent them to Neil and to Tony. And it looked like the tubing was all tangled up and clogged up. Since then, this has been like maybe a 3-week project, going on 3 weeks. They've went in and they cleared that out. And now the street is still in array with that big hole that we need to get fixed. I want to know what's the next process of getting that fixed? And do we have a tubing maintenance list, or how do we maintain to keep these tubings clear so the water flows through, so we don't have all of this when the trucks go over it and it pushes it down or pushes the street up or whatever we have. So that's my first question is that list. If not, how can we start one so that people, residents that have the ditches and have the tubing, how they can keep that clear. And then the second one, the second issue that I have was on Deer Creek Traffic Way, and it's awesome. It's great. It's wonderful. It looks great and it looks wonderful. But I just don't think we cut it back enough when you're entering on going eastbound on I-70, because you can see the big trucks have already ran through there, and it's just going to tear it up again. So I would like an explanation. I understand the sides are kind of swooped in, and I think that's great, but we still have that curbing around the edge, and I thought we would just go completely flat the last time I brought that to our attention. So those are the two issues that I have. I know me and Tony worked on Doane Street, DOANE. And staff spent 2 days out there. Again, it's that culvert tubing that when the water runs, it ran across the street. It made big dips and grooves in the street, and that tubing all needs to be so the water flows and goes back to the creek. And so again, there's just been a couple instances that I'm really concerned about.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I guess just to paraphrase the first question, who oversees culverts, not necessarily storm sewers, but just culverts under streets? Is that stormwater, or is that the street department, city manager? Any reaction to that?
Braxton can give a better answer, but I recall it's been the responsibility of utilities has worked in installing those and putting those back in place and clearing out when we can. But Braxton, am I incorrect in that or correct?
So I just want to, there's a very clear distinction between a culvert under a drive approach which is the sole responsibility of the property owner, versus the corrugated metal pipe that we have throughout various places of the city that's part of the city's stormwater infrastructure. So culverts for private drive approach are the sole responsibility of the property owner. Corrugated metal pipe that is part of the city's 400 miles of stormwater enclosed system is the responsibility of the utilities department. Shortly before this committee meeting, I received an email from the council office with a photo of what appears to be corrugated metal pipe along 8th Street. I have forwarded that to the Water Pollution Control Division to have staff go out and investigate it and then provide a response to Council Member Ortiz and the City Council office.
Very good. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Braxton. The photo that I sent, the street, there's still a big chunk of the street that's missing on it. If you look at it, what are we waiting for? Is that the street department's problem? Or so in this photo, it seems like we've got a lot of different departments that are responsible. Am I correct?
Yes, you are. The street's the responsibility of the street division of Public Works to go out and do any repairs to that. So we'll need to get with Jackie Vogel and see what we can do to get some type of repair done to that.
All right. So assumption is that an answer, a response, and action plan will be forthcoming.
Yes.
Chairman,
Oh, there's Jackie.
I have not received those photos you're referencing of the street. So if someone could forward those to my department, to myself, and we will investigate and address it.
I just forwarded the email to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Braxton.
Thanks, Braxton.
Very good. Thank you. I think the second issue was Deer Creek Parkway. Assume Mr. Bidwell, maybe somebody in Public Works can take a look at that and get back with Councilwoman Ortiz.
Yeah, I can. We did pull those medians back. I can't tell you off the top of my head how much, but I can look into that to see how much they were pulled back and whether they were constructed to plan. I'm pretty sure they were, but we can look into that.
Very good. We appreciate that. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Neil. And I hate to be such a pest, but do we have a maintenance list on our culverts?
Braxton. All right, Braxton, do we have a list or not?
Yeah, this is Bob Sample. We do not. We'll address those as complaints come in, but we don't have a maintenance schedule for it.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if that's something the committee would want to look at, because there's a lot of problems in several districts that don't have, we do maintenance on curbs, we do maintenance on other things. And I think this is just important so that the water is flowing because it's tearing up our streets. And over here, we have a lot of rock streets. And I would just like to see us implement a list or how we would go about that, so our residents would know who to call, what to do, and how to do it. I think it's very important, because it just seems like more and more, being on the council, I've always dealt with this. Like this particular tubing is in the alley. So is it, who's responsible for the alley when you pull in the alley? Is that the city of Topeka? These are just things I think that we would maybe need to look into, or maybe we can get it on your agenda.
Yeah, we'll certainly add that to the agenda. I assume that somewhere we have an accounting of all the culverts that are the responsibility of the city, not the homeowner. Maybe that'd be a good place to start, just get an overview of that. And then have Braxton, Bob, and their staff look into what it would take to get some sort of regular maintenance or at least inspection program together. I know there's similar things for the rest of the storm sewer system, the bigger box culverts and things like that. So good suggestion. All right, any other items from the committee? Seeing none, we will move to item 8, which is draft agenda. I think we'll discuss sidewalks again. I'm assuming we'll have fleet replacement update, leasing update. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
Right, we'll touch that again as we continue to, I think it'll be an ongoing event until we get to a final decision on what we want to do. Just continue to update it, get the information you need in order to be able to make a recommendation going forward.
All right, and I think one of the items we talked about in the past addressing is facilities.
Correct.
Would January be a good time to start taking a look at the facility inventory, replacement, facilities that are going to come up in the CIP? I know we've talked about in the past the LEC, parking garages. Seems to be a myriad of issues out there. Might be a good time to start that discussion.
Anna, you ready to comment on that?
Yeah, we can do an overview of facilities, including parking in January. We may also have some specific items regarding the firm for 2021. We're working through that as the team is getting past the CARES deployment items. So we'll definitely have something for you then.
Very good. Anything else from the committee? Any other items you'd like to see on the agenda? Seeing none, we need to set a meeting date, and it appears that the kind of this third Monday, I guess, works fairly well. January would be, the third Monday would be the 18th. Does that work kind of in the same time frame? Mr. Emerson's a yes.
No, that's Martin
That's
Luther
MLK
King.
Day.
Oh, that's right. Yep. All right. Well, let's push it out then to the 4th. There is the 4th Monday of January would be the 25th. What does that look like for everybody? Thumbs up. Looks
Same
good.
time?
Yeah, I kind of like the 2 to 4. Does that work? Is that better than the 3 to 5? All right, let's just plan on 4th Monday in January, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
Chairman, this is Liz.
Yeah.
Would you like for that January meeting to be completely virtual as well, or would you like a hybrid?
Let's do virtual for now. I think we're certainly into this for at least another month or two. So certainly January. I think this works. This works okay. So let's just do it completely virtual.
Okay, sounds good. I'll get that out.
Very good. All right. Seeing no other items, no other discussion, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you. Happy holidays.